I'd like to call this meeting to order for the Blackhawk County Board of Supervisors for April 11th, 2023. Roll call, please, Mr. Vader.
Hall.
Here.
Little. Schwartz.
Here.
Drelka.
Here.
Leyland.
Here. Would everyone please join us in a moment of silence to reflect on our actions today? Thank you. Would you please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 1 is the agenda received as proposed or as amended.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded, and I had mentioned to Supervisor Hall this morning that I hadn't had an opportunity to review the last logo revisions, so I was going to ask if it was fine with everyone today to just postpone that or table it until next week. And if others have comments, they can get to us, but I thought maybe he and I could just look through the changes that we were talking about and then have it ready for next week on the agenda to vote as a RFP. That meets with everyone's approval. So as amended is fine with that, 9G? Okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The agenda is received as amended. Public comments. Is there anyone in the audience today that would like to speak on something that is not on today's agenda? Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to speak on something? Okay, hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to claims and payments. This is a resolution that the Board of Supervisors approve expenditures and that the county auditor be authorized and directed to issue checks against the various settlements of such claims as allowed.
So moved. Second.
And moved and seconded. Michelle?
Good morning, Board. Our total payments today are $170,523.98. Nothing really large or significant included in that amount today. We are also paying $2,162.16 from the 60/40 fund for security. Everything appears to be in order today.
Thank you. Any questions for Michelle? It's been moved and seconded. Please answer as your name is called.
Hall.
Yes.
Schwartz.
Yes.
Drelka.
Yes.
Leyland.
Yes. Item 4, presentation on the opioid funding request of Pathways Behavioral Services. Vicki Mueller, Executive Director, making the presentation.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Vicki Mueller. I'm with Pathways. I've been with Pathways since 2000, so a very long time. Pathways has been in Blackhawk County since 1967. I have handouts in front of you that kind of talk about our history and what we've been doing. We started in 1967 providing solely substance abuse treatment services. And since then, we've expanded into mental health counseling. We do peer support. We do prevention work. We're out in the communities. We cover 6 counties in Northeast Iowa. Last year alone, we served 5,600 people. And 24,000 of those were in Blackhawk County. So primarily, almost half are coming from Blackhawk County, who are serving in our substance abuse, in our mental health, and our counseling services. We do see children. We saw 1,191 children last year, 18 and under. And a lot of those are small children being seen for mental health or for their parents are using substances. That's what we do. Questions about Pathways and what we've done in the community? I think you're all fairly familiar with what Pathways does. Today, what we're asking for is funding from the opioid funding that Blackhawk County is receiving. And this funding is going to be around for about 18 years. You're going to be getting a set amount, I think, and that's constantly changing as more funding is coming through, more lawsuits are coming through. I just sent something out to Supervisor Leyland. I just sent something out to her last week or yesterday, and also yesterday, more funding from Walmart and things like that are coming through. Blackhawk County is set to receive hundreds of thousands of dollars. Over the course of the years, you're going to receive several $1 million in this opioid settlement funding. Pathways is asking for your support for 2 projects out of this funding. The first project is support of our Detox 3.7 unit. Our Detox is a 24/7 unit. We see about 400 people a year in that unit who come through and they're detoxing from substances. We're not medically managed, we're medically monitored. What that means is 24/7 nurses are there, and then a doctor or AR&P sees them once a day. We're a lot less expensive for the client coming in, a lot less expensive for our funders who pay for our services. However, our results are very good. Most of the people coming into our detox center transition down into our residential and are with us, and then they go to our intensive outpatient services and eventually our outpatient services, and then they graduate from our program.
How many a year?
In our detox center, about 350 to 400, depending on the year. Yep.
You mentioned, I know in the written summary that you gave of the program, it's like Pathways, with the support of Blackhawk County Sheriff, would like to request this. What type of support is
Well,
it?
the support, I've talked to Tony about this many times, and he's very much in support of our detox program. Mm-hmm. And then the next item on the list that we're also asking for funding for is the embedded case manager and jail-based counselor that is there. And we work very closely with Tony on those services.
So the support of allowing those individuals to be in the jail.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, so the first request, it costs between $250 and $500 a day for our detox services. And that's the nurse's time, the CNA time, our AR&P time coming in. There's a lot of case management for some of the people, especially those who are suffering with opioid use disorder. They're in our program at least 7 to 10 days just in detox. And I got to tell you, just these past 2 weeks, we've had a huge increase in calls for people wanting to detox off heroin. So I'm thinking we're seeing an increase in that coming to Blackhawk County. I think this is just the beginning. So the $250 a day doesn't even come close to covering our cost. $500 a day, yes, it does. So what we're asking out of the detox is $91,240. And that would be used to secure bed days, help cover our costs in our detox unit. Right now, we're running at a deficit, and we have been, but we think it's such a vital service in the community. Hospitals, yes, there's hospital-based detox services, but those are so much more expensive, and clients are in the hole when they leave the hospital. We have some funding to cover it, but it's not covering all of it. The second request is for the jail-based services. Right now, we've got an embedded case manager, and we've got counselors that come over there on the regular and do the screenings within the jail, so that people in jail are ready to begin their treatment. They're getting treatment, and then once they get out of the jail, there's a seamless services, so they're less likely to reuse, and also less likely to have more legal issues later on. What questions do you have?
So again, you're talking about the full-time case manager.
Yep, it's a full-time case manager, and then it's part of a counselor's time, because they're there a couple days a week, I think.
And I know one of my questions was going to be what happens when the funding stops, but you're thinking in this case, like this is a request for this year, but this is something
That could reoccur each year, depending on my results. I mean, obviously, I would come back in here and share with you how we're doing, what the funding was used for, how successful people are. I mean, we track everyone that comes through our services. individual basis, and then we do some aggregate data that we are available to provide.
So you're tracking that information now? then, with
Absolutely.
all of it? And I assume you have some pretty good success stories.
We do. We actually higher success rate than national success rates for substance use. Nationally, about a third of the people going through treatment will be successful the first time. Ours is closer to 45%. It's simply, we're a longstanding program. We spend a lot of resources into training our staff. Almost all of our staff have master's or higher level. They work really hard at what they do. And our satisfaction surveys, we're always in 95%. 95% of the people that go to our services like the services they're receiving. They're happy with what they're receiving. I mean, every once in a while, obviously, we 100% approval, but yes, we work really hard.
Well, you mentioned your rates are much higher than the national.
They
rates,
are.
So that's
Yeah, they are.
a real plus.
You said that you are seeing an uptick in opioid.
We are seeing uptick in heroin specifically,
Okay.
which wasn't the case about a couple months ago. It had been prescription drugs, but we're seeing an uptick in these last month or so in heroin.
In the last year or so, you said between 350 to 400.
Correct.
How
It was
many?
like 359 last fiscal year, and the one before that, I think we were like 370.
What's a rough percentage of those beds that were occupied by folks addicted to opioids?
About 10%. That's with all of our treatment. It's about 10% of the people coming in have opioid addictions. And I'm not sure you all have had the opportunity to read the Exhibit 1 of the opioid settlement on how those dollars should be spent, but they've got some key areas that you're required to spend those dollars. You can't spend them on anything. So yeah, treatment, supporting treatment programs, supporting jail-based services are top on their list. And I have to mention, we also do prevention services. We have a couple other opioid grants, and they're covering prevention services. We're already paying for people's medication-assisted treatment as they need it through another grant. We have different funding, so this is funding that would help us expand our services, make our services more robust.
But primarily just directing at the jail.
Just directing at the jail and our detox center. Yep.
Yeah, and the detox center. So that could change over a period of time.
We
come
could
up
ask
with
for
other-
different funding. We could sit down as a group and figure out if there's something else that might work better. Absolutely. I can tell you what other counties are doing. They have committees that they're looking through that I sit on, and we talk about our needs and things like that. I've already done several needs assessments for Blackhawk County. I have that available if you'd like to see them. I've got opioids needs assessments and things like that, if that would be something you'd be interested in.
I was going to ask if you did those, so if you would send that, I think that
A
would be
needs
good
assessment,
for
I can
us.
do the
Yes.
opioids needs
Yep.
assessment,
Yep.
absolutely.
You mentioned difficulty in nursing, kind of subsidizing, I guess, or looking at staffing agencies to help because there is such a shortage.
We absolutely do, and to cover some of our shifts, we have had to hire staffing agencies, and they are 1.5 to 2 times more expensive right now than if we were to hire a nurse. We're looking at our salaries right now. That's a little bit stressful. We're having difficulty competing with nursing homes and hospitals, which a lot of places are.
Is that limiting you to any great deal to the service that you're providing?
It's not now. We have had to reduce some of our time spent on weekends providing services, but we're gearing up to go back to fully staffed here in a little bit.
So would this funding model be us paying to always have a bed on reserve, or paying as we use them from the jail?
Usually it's always to have that bed. It's to help to support my staff time for being on the unit.
Yep. Okay, makes sense.
So we would do this though just for annually? reviewing this type of
I would
thing
think
is
you
how
would want to
it.
do it that
Yeah,
way.
okay.
That's,
That's typically what you do, I would assume.
well, typically it's 1 or 2 years, and then we come back and see how the results are and if we need to tweak anything.
I think that's great.
I mean, it's fiscally responsible to do it that way.
I appreciate it, and I think the updates and that type of thing too are always good to have questions and gather information, so that's great.
And Mike, I know amounts are changing and updating, but do you have an approximate of where we're at now, what we'll be getting annually?
I do not have that on me right now. I can check with the auditor and accounting, and get that to you later on.
Okay, thank you.
I think Michelle's been looking at that too. I mean,
I can tell you, we've already seen more than 500,000, so
Okay.
it,
Yeah.
this contract that she's requesting should be easily affordable
Mm-hmm.
annually for the next 18 years, so.
and do we not have about $2 million?
It'll
Something
be
that-
more than that, I think now. There's been quite a few. There were 5 more settlements that you just approved recently, so
Yeah.
it will be a substantial sum of money that we can invest in this program over the next 18 years.
18 years, yeah, that's. kinda
That's a
surprising.
long time. And I did want to
But-
point out that
Not all of them take that long.
I was going to say, there will be variances in payment over that time because every defendant who settled on this has settled on a different schedule, or some of them have anyway.
there is a 2-day training coming up. I sent that
Yes.
to Supervisor Leyland. I think she forwarded that to
I
you.
forwarded,
To me
yes.
at least.
Yes,
Okay.
so
I thought she
that's
had
in
it.
May. I would highly recommend somebody from the county going to that. Yeah.
No, I thought, yeah, I appreciate that you do
Yep.
that, and that's why I said,
Yes.
I think she had it, but I forwarded it again.
It was a good idea. Repetition is good.
We always have it on our calendar, so thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes. Any other questions?
Not for Vicky, but so the money's already been deposited into a county account.
Some of it has, yes. Like, it's about 500 and some odd thousand today.
And when's the next disbursement?
I am not
To us.
sure when these next 5 that were just signed, I'm not sure what the timing is on paying us. We're still kind of in the gearing up phase, which is why I think a 1-year contract makes sense right now, because I think a year from now, we'll have probably a much better picture on how much we're gonna get over time.
Well, and I think there'd be some sense in making every contract actually annually, just because it's contingent on receiving things, and I wouldn't want us to be left in a lurch if there was a hiccup in paying settlement funds.
How do you see that working, Vicki, as far as services provided and us rebating you or providing?
I think so. I think it would be like almost, well, for the detail, I would think you would be at like a monthly,
Oh, okay.
a monthly, we bill you
or
monthly
something.
for it.
Okay.
Is how we do other contracts such as this. It's like a
Okay,
per month, same amount per month.
that's what I thought, you probably had
Yep.
similar, okay.
The question for me is how long we're committing each time for that monthly payment.
The amount,
Yeah.
would we not divide the,
Well, we would, but I'm saying, are you going to commit to 1 year? Are you going to commit to 5 years? Are you going to commit to, however long it might be? Again, just in case there's some hiccup in receiving funds. It's nice that we're building up we've got an account built up right now, and that's going to build up some more. But I always worry about what if somebody fails on their obligation on another side of things. There can be some difficulty in recouping that.
well, at 184,240, we're probably well within what we have, at least
I
now.
think so.
Right.
And to do it only 1 year, we're probably
For at least a year, you're fine.
good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you receiving support from Bremer, Buchanan, Butler, Chickasaw?
Right now, I'm in talks with Bremer County, Grundy County, and I have a meeting tomorrow with Butler, or Buchanan County. We do receive funds from Butler County already, so yes. Mhm. Chickasaw, they're still thinking too, so yeah.
Are there multiple needs? I was going to say, you're the only request. I know you requested this, I think it was back in October. And then,
I did. I think there might be some other needs, maybe with, there's some postpartum stuff in here. I would think maybe Alan The Protection Center might be a one that might want to reach out. I'll talk to them and see if that might be something else you might want to look at.
I know the health departments brought that up at some of their board meetings too, and I didn't know if it was something our health department had needs for, or could uses for, or knew of others, but I just thought when we have the funding available.
Yep, and they just want to make sure they talk to us first, because we have, like for naloxone, we get lots of free naloxone
Yes.
already. You don't want to spend your money where we're already getting things.
Oh, for certain.
Yep.
I appreciate that.
Yep.
What about opportunities for investing in some prevention programs too? It seems, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the big opioid hit, hasn't quite hit Blackhawk County. It's still methamphetamine. It's still the hardest of the hard drugs that we're dealing with. But it feels. But you're saying you're seeing an uptick now, so it's that tide could be changing. So it's.
We actually did invest a little bit in some Too Good for Drugs training for my prevention staff, and that might be something we want to look at later on in schools if the schools will allow us to come in and do some of those trainings in Blackhawk County. We're doing them in Buchanan County here in a minute.
Is there a contract that's, like I say, a template of a contract that you have or that we have or we can access? Maybe that's part of that workshop. I was just thinking
Well,
for.
let's figure that out.
All right.
Mike
I'm-
would love to do that.
Like, great. Well, I'm assuming that as soon as this funding is available, you'd love to start doing it. It's-
Absolutely, yes, thank
Okay,
you.
so it wouldn't be like a later timeline. That was all. I was.
Now, yeah, we can start using it. The one grant doesn't end till September, so the one for the sheriff's office, we maybe could hold off on that portion of it, but the rest.
Okay. Well, that's great. Give us some time to work on it too.
Yeah, I'd like to see if there's some form contracts out there, frankly, so we don't have to invent this wheel.
Yeah. Yes. Well, that's why I hope like a workshop or whatever they're having that you mentioned, that would be a lot of that type of information shared. Great.
Okay.
Super. Well, thank you. Is anybody else, any questions, comments, any more?
I think this is a great way for us to get started right away this year,
Yeah.
investing these funds.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 5, receive project updates from department heads and elected officials.
Good morning, Board. Kathy Nicholas, County Engineer.
Morning.
A brief update on the gravel roads. Our secondary roads crews are out placing mile rock. They started that last week in the north portion of the county. They are also pulling in shoulders so that on the paved roads and the gravel roads, so that that's our way of getting rid of that little lip of grass that develops over a number of years. It allows, when we get rid of that lip of water, that lip of grass or dirt, it allows the water to fall into the ditch as the road was designed. This is good practice for our motor graders to do. It's good maintenance practices. We have received, every year we receive quite a few phone calls, but that is, like I said, standard maintenance practices for gravel roads to allow water to drain off the roads. And lastly, our planting season is nearly upon us. We are starting to see a lot more large agricultural equipment on the road system. Again, I urge all residents to slow down, pay attention, put your phones down, and be aware of this equipment. It is continuing to get larger every year, it seems like. And then our contract work, Taylor Construction, is over on Pointer Road Bridge. They should begin, I believe they're partway through removing the old structure at this point, and they are progressing well. Can I answer any questions at this time? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other department heads?
Good morning, Board.
morning.
Yolando Lovelace, Veterans Affairs Office. Good morning. Just had an opportunity, Mr. Little, Supervisor Little participated in our meeting last week, and we just want to thank him for participating in that. And I just want to share a couple slides, if you don't mind, of our meeting. I got to hopefully, Al, can you see that? Okay.
Yes.
So, Sexual Assault Awareness Month and also Child Abuse Prevention Month is something that we are also mindful for here with our veterans, and we just want to remind everyone about those two. A couple of the things that I'd like to share is as the summer starts to to come fold. We're going to get busy. We have the Memorial Day Parade. We have My Waterloo Day. But also we have on Memorial Day is the flags out at our various cemeteries. One that we take part in our office is Garden Memories. Garden Memories, as you know, has the largest of our veterans who are entombed there, over 4,000 veterans. And so we're looking for volunteers to help us with that time-honored event. Again, at UAW, I know you guys have these slides. That's the reason why I'm just going to be quick. Just a couple that I want to share that are still doing a fundraiser for us in support of our picnic area. And we thank the UAW 838 for what they're doing. And that's coming up on the 22nd of April. Couple of things that I just wanted to point out is there's three people that I envy. One is Grant, the other one is Michael, and then this last one is Tony Thompson. I spend all my God-given money trying to be as well-dressed as these three young.
You've done well today.
you did all right.
You did all right. Yeah.
I'm really in the hole when it comes to trying to stand up to these guys, but what mentors they are. But our hidden hero today is Tony Thompson, Sheriff Tony Thompson. And as you can see, he has done a great amount of work, not just for our country, but for our county. Being the county sheriff, I think we have the best in the state. Out of all the 99 counties, we have the best sheriff in the state. But he also gave us 20-something years of service. He turned over his military police occupation that when he was serving in the Guard, and he transitioned that to a civilian. And you can see the various awards he has. Again, a great guy, someone that really needs to be honored. And so I had to dig real deep to find Mr. Thompson. But we have a lot of veterans, again, going throughout our county, about the 7,400 veterans that we have. We got a lot of veterans doing great things. And so today we recognize Sheriff Tony Thompson for his great work in the military, serving our great country with honor, courage, and distinction, and then also for what he's doing right now for our county. So again, Sheriff, thank you for all you do. And hopefully I don't have to compete with you no more.
No.
So based off of, we've been working with Roy, and Roy's been working with, it's been a kind of like a tandem, working with Mike in conservation, just trying to get some ideals on the shelters that, if the Board of Supervisors elects to approve it, what would be the best fit for Pinecrest with the way the building looks, make sure that it corresponds with the building, but also how can the other tenants take advantage of it. So these are just a couple proposals that we're looking at. We haven't finalized anything, but working with conservation, getting what they do out at the parks, and then working with Rory and his great team in that standpoint. A couple other things that I wanted to bring out was Al and his team at IT, they did our conference room. And so now we have a better way of presenting during our monthly meetings. I just want to thank Al and Corey, right? Corey, for taking the extra opportunity out of their work schedule to come over and help us poor veterans in that standpoint. But also just going through, we participated in UNI post-traumatic stress disorder conference. That was a very good conference. We're hoping that grows. The Pathways was just talking about that. Mental health is just such a challenging avenue when it comes to our veterans, but not just mental health, but substance abuse. And one of the things that we are, and I keep briefing our staff on, is every veteran that comes in and we sit across, that's one of the things we also have to worry about when we're trying to help them with their benefits. Is there something that is a secondary effect to why they're coming to our office? You know, are they struggling with post-traumatic stress or military sexual trauma, or are they also struggling with gambling and substance abuse in that standpoint? So we honor those resources that are out there helping not just veterans but our community, because our community is suffering. Just look at our stoplight for our quarter. We ended our third quarter. Now we're proceeding into our fourth quarter. We're pretty much green when it comes to our stoplight chart. When, in that standpoint, the only one that we were yellow was we didn't serve as many veterans in our food pantry, which is a good thing in that standpoint. And we continue on with green Again, the trust fund is going to remain red until the beginning of the new year, which is in July, and then that funds will be available, and then we can proceed on helping our veterans in that standpoint. And then lastly, what we do considerably in administration and budget, we're all green there. And you guys see this. I looked at second quarter to third quarter comparisons. As the weather gets better, we're seeing more walk-ins. And what the PACT Act has driven is starting to bring in our veterans who had never been to our office before. In particular, with adding blood pressure as one of the presumptive conditions, is starting to bring in a lot of people who are suffering from that particular condition. And so we're happy to see that with the PACT Act. It is driving. It's not just our county, but it's all 99 counties. Their numbers are going up based off of veterans who are participating in seeking those benefits. And then this slide here is just showing you a comparison of where we're at compared to FY18. These are full years, FY18, 19, 20, 21, and 22. And then where we're at right now in the third quarter with 3 months left. We're headed towards back to post-COVID days where we were seeing about 25 to 2,200 veterans a year. And so that's our goal, is to get back to that. And we're headed in that direction. And then why is it so important to see so many veterans? And it's because of the monthly grand totals that we bring in on by the top 6 or 7 counties within the state. And again, this is how I measure our production. And that's why outreach is so important, because there are still a lot of veterans who have not came to our office to seek what their entitlements might be. And then from our food pantry, our monthly cash donations, we've got about 410. We would like to thank the Cedar Falls AMVETS. They brought in $1,800 worth of Walmart gift cards. Again, we can utilize that as an offset to help veterans in need. And we appreciate all the service organizations that really do take part and help our veterans. From our revenue standpoint, we're sitting at right now in our general fund about $35K. And continuing to grow, and you can see some of the other revenues that we are taking in and accounting for as we go forth. Then lastly, we have done a great job, our staff has, as far as our budget. Our budget is green. In fact, we have surplus in a lot of our budget lines, unfortunately, but it's a good thing, because that means people are taking care of themselves. We're there ready to support them, but just got a surplus in that standpoint. And lastly, that is it. Just standing by to address any questions or concerns. Again, I do have the best job in the county.
Great. And you dress the part well.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thanks. I appreciate the update. Oh, I was going to say, I think it's good information for all of us to hear, not just at the board, at your VA meeting. So thank you for bringing that forward. Anyone else in the audience?
I do need to make a correction.
All right.
Apparently, we had an update to the claims that we're paying on Friday, so that corrected amount should be $170,543.89. It's $19.91 more than what I reported earlier. Sorry about that.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone on Zoom that has an update for the board? Oh, hearing or seeing none, we'll move on to item 6, minutes approved for April 4th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. Item 7 is the consent agenda. The following items are acted upon by a single resolution without separate discussion unless someone wants to remove one of the items for discussion. If there are none,
Motion to approve. Second.
moved and seconded. Please answer as your name is called.
Schwartz.
Yes.
Jelka.
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
Balin.
Yes. Item 8, contracts and agreements. Resolution that the statement of work between Blackhawk County and the ISET Group to perform a technology assessment be approved and direct the chair to sign as recommended by Al Yu, Information Technology Director.
So moved.
Second.
Morning, Board.
Good morning.
Al, IT Director. Yep. The statement of work will allow the Iowa County IT Group to perform an annual assessment. The annual assessment is an industry best practice and is very common.
Thank you. We're familiar with the group, so thanks very much. It's been moved and seconded. Please answer as your name is called.
Jelka,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Schwartz.
Yes.
Leyland.
Yes. Item 9, other business. Resolution to approve the purchase of a mobile health clinic for the Health Department with an estimated cost of $600,000 to be paid for with American Rescue Plan funds. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Caitlin? Thank you.
Second.
That's fine.
There it comes. Okay, good morning, Board. Caitlin Emmerich, Interim Director for the Health Department. I believe you all had a chance to review the questionnaire that was submitted for the mobile clinic, and so I have just a couple of visuals to add to the questionnaire to get a sense of what a mobile clinic, what we're talking about. So we have a couple of quotes that we were able to review, and this is just the visuals from one of the quotes. This was Matthews Specialty Vehicles. And so this one in the lower middle is kind of along the lines of what we're looking at. It would be a smaller unit, so our staff would not need a CDL to drive it, that anyone could drive it, but it would still have the specifications that we're looking for in terms that it would have an exam space, a bathroom space, and would still be large enough to perform the services that we're looking to perform in the mobile clinic. This is more of a drawing of kind of what we're looking for, or along the lines there. This is kind of the side view where you can see there's a couple of, there's a laboratory space, there's an exam space, and then this third image kind of shows it a little better from the top down, that there would also be a bathroom space so we could perform our STI screening services with the mobile clinic as well. The bathroom space is pretty critical for that. It would also include refrigeration, so we could put vaccines in the more mobile unit, those kinds of things. So any questions regarding the questionnaire or the visuals that I've shared?
For the largest percentage of the work you'll do in the rural communities, or in this community, I guess, as well, too, how do you see that fulfilling your mission?
Yeah, so that's probably the thing that I'm most excited about for the mobile clinic, is that we know that we have a large percent of our population, or not a large percent, but a significant percent of our population that has transportation barriers. And so this is really the best way that we've found to address those transportation barriers, to go directly to them where they are. We've kind of popped around a couple of ideas of, maybe partnering up with where the mobile food banks go, then we could go at the same time. And so we could kind of reduce burden on people for having to go multiple places, multiple times. We have kind of some different ideas for how we would get out into the community. And it would be, kind of in the metro area here, but also in our smaller communities where they might have less access to health services.
And you would see using this in addition to the point of going to where the people are, you'd be at, I know you're already at different community festivals and things like that, and this would be, adding to that and the services that you can do at those events, right?
Exactly.
I think even the promotion of it at certain events,
Yeah.
to get the word out
Yeah.
that this is available and will be used, I think it's great.
And as you can see from the kind of the first picture here, this is an example of the advertising that would go on the outside of the unit. So the unit itself is kind of a module for advertising and awareness of the presence of public health and services that we would be able to offer.
And a variety of services that you'll be able to offer with it too as well, so it's not going to be designated for just certain
Correct.
activities. I
Yep.
like
So we're looking to, at the minimum, offer our HIV testing, our STI testing, tuberculosis screening, our immunization clinics, and then any collaboration with partners. I think that one we still have to work out because there's some legal agreements that we'd have to put into place for how that would work, of course. But we would really like to collaborate with partners on some of our high-risk or vulnerable populations to, get to where they are. And then, of course, oral health services, I missed that one, and well child exams.
Yeah, it's true. That's a big percentage.
How many employees will man it? One or two?
So Tanya Wilder is our clinic manager, and she said that 2 employees would be needed to kind of run the clinic. And so there would be 2 in the unit.
Because I'm concerned about the welfare of the employees.
Yeah.
Well, there could be additional, could there not? I mean, it's like events and that type of thing where you could have more people or multiple people.
Sure,
around.
we could be, yeah,
But it
but the
can be done
minimum
with 2.
to run the unit, it would be 2
Okay.
employees. And we did kind of talk about safety in terms of where we are in the community, and had a little bit of discussion on that. And we would kind of use the same approach with safety that we do with our outreach events, or, you know, as we're going out into the field and things like that, because what's not as widely known or visible is that we have staff going into the field, into houses every single day, you know, to provide treatment, to do follow-up, those kinds of things. And sometimes those houses are in neighborhoods where one person might feel a little less safe than another person. So we already have kind of some of those controls in place right now for how we assess and bring people with us or request help or that kind of thing. Any other questions on the mobile clinic?
No?
Yep, and there could be, a potential role for this in, some emergency response, like, say another pandemic comes in some different form.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's
for
the...
setting up testing someplace, or setting up.
Absolutely. Yeah. The use of the ARPA funds, of course, is that if in the event of another pandemic, that it would be used for mitigation of disease. So whether that's vaccination or treatment or whatever, that we would be able to use it for that as well.
We've had a lot of things that are good use, but I think this one particularly was, I thought,
Yeah.
something that we see of real value going forward, so thank you. Are there any other questions or comments regarding this item? It's been moved and seconded. Please answer as your name is called.
Hall?
Yes.
Schwartz?
Yes.
Jelka?
Yes.
Leyland?
Yes. Thank you, Caitlin. Item B, resolution to proceed with bid letting and construction for the Pinecrest Patio and Shelter Project for the Veterans Affairs Office with an estimated cost of $110,000 to be paid for with American Rescue Plan funds.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
Board, I just want
morning.
to
Yeah.
introduce Mike Butler. He's a commissioner for the veterans, and want Max some questions.
Mike Butler, 1022 Washington, Cedar Falls, Iowa. I am a vet, and what brought this to our attention was a motorized wheelchair tipping over because we're set up for what used to be in our space in out back. You realize that you really do need solid ground for disabled, not just vets, but disabled. And we don't want a lot of concrete for little kids, but old people, old kids like me, need a little more. On the other hand, the building itself, I call them a gazebo, add a lot because it is sunny out there. Once a week we have a veterans picnic, and it goes over the noon hour, and the darn building isn't just quite tall enough to block the sun. So we have the heat anyway. But the nice thing is it's usable by anybody. Obviously, it's kind of on our end of the building, but it adds something. And actually, we'd invite the supervisors out early one morning, and we could have a meeting out there. But I do think it'll pay for itself in that it'll allow us to better treat veterans and offer opportunities to others through the county to use it.
I know one of your other board members were here a week or two ago and talked about the relationship with the health department and the VA working together, and I just thought that would probably work for some other additional events that you'd have together or working together, and yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I think this is excellent. This is something I wanted to see included when we first did the original renovations of the health department. So I'm excited that we've got this opportunity to make it happen now. Or I mean, of the VA department.
Did you want to comment more, Yolando, or
I just wanted to comment on one thing that you mentioned. the relationship at the Pinecrest building with the tenants, with Health Department, DHS, is one of the best. I know the Health Department even reached out to our department to say, hey, for the sign, would you like to participate in development of the sign? So we're seeing that relationship. They've offered us, when they have the food vans, they let us know about the food vans. And here's another opportunity, if they bring the food vans out, where the tenants can sit and enjoy lunch in that standpoint. So we see it as a win-win, and we thank the leadership that we have over at the Pinecrest building, because we are one team, one fight in that standpoint. I'd like to just tell you that.
No, I thought that was great, and the sign is a perfect example, too, of the sharing of services, I think, to promote your events and things going on, too, so.
I will say, I think the first photo of those 3 gazebos, the one with the really nice arches, I think complements the Pinecrest building really well.
I wondered if that would be a difficult choice.
Choice is made.
Anyone else say, yep, okay, we're done. So this is a resolution that was moved and seconded. Please answer as your name is called.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Jelka,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Balin.
Yes. Item C, discussion and possible board action for approval for increased cost for the digital sign for the Pinecrest building from $20,000 to $25,208 for electrical, installation, and variance.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Caitlin?
Yes, I'm back again. So
Yes, thank you.
just to talk to you this time about the request for the increasing of the ask for installation, electrical, and variance fees. So on March 14th, so not that long ago, you guys remember, this board approved the expenses related to the Pinecrest digital sign installation, variance fee, and electrical service installation for an amount not to exceed $20,000, with funds coming from the building maintenance budget. The sign displayed here was the original design proposed by Nagel Signs, which was the winning bid, which informed the cost estimates and the funding requests. And then after the initial approval of the expenses related to the installation, variance fee, and electrical service, the Board of Adjustment for the City of Waterloo did approve the variance for the sign, and the tenants have been asked for feedback, as Yolando referenced, on the sign design. Based on the feedback from the tenants and an internal county team, a new design is proposed with a brick base, navy color, and navy border, giving the sign a more cohesive look. The cost of the sign has increased due to the addition of the metal trim all the way around the sign, and the cost of installation has increased due to the addition of the masonry costs for the brick base. And I just want to point out that Brian Buss from Nagel Signs, I believe, is on Zoom, as is Lisa Sesterhan and Gabby DeWitt, who have kind of been spearheading this from the department's perspective. Any questions for
I was
me?
going to say, did they want to say anything or talk about it? I know when you talked through it the other day, as far as looking at the differences, and I don't know if everybody remembers, but the first one with the green colors and was kind of more of a, had more metal involved in it. And
More rework of the existing sign.
just yeah, and the old one we're hoping kind of dies away, but just blow that one out. But the brick, I think, was part of the group's thought that it kind of aligned with the current structure, as well as kind of accentuated the
I think that's
sign, too.
appropriate.
Yeah, I think it looks great.
So I can't see
Did
Brian,
any of
Gabby,
the-
or Lisa from my perspective, so I'll
Yeah.
stop sharing so we can see
Oh,
them.
okay. I was going to say, did any of the tenants disagree or have any other thoughts or opinions on the sign as well, or?
I don't believe so. I'll ask Gabby or Lisa to weigh in on that.
Great.
This is Gabby. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. No, I mean, we walked around and talked to Director Lovelace, like he mentioned, as well as County Services, Iowa HHS, and everyone. Well, I think Yolando's direct quote was, anything would be 180 degrees better than what we have. And I'm not sure how many times he said that, but multiple. But everyone was just super excited. One of the things that we really did hear from all of the tenants is that they used the word Pinecrest when they're telling people where the building is. And so we felt like the name Pinecrest still needed to be very prevalent on the sign. But the other thing they felt strongly about is having the tenant list. But we felt like, especially with the reorganization that's going at Iowa HHS, and also just kind of how wordy that original sign design looked, that we would just do a electronic slide that maybe holds a little bit longer than the rest of the carousel to have a list of the tenants, and that would be easily updated. And everyone agreed to that when we put that back out to them, and they really liked the new design.
And you also added in large letters, the Blackhawk County part when we were talking about too, making it known that it was a Blackhawk County.
It's a county building, yes, exactly. And also we felt like it was important to have the address below the Pinecrest, just because if somebody's put 1407 Independence in their GPS, that just confirms to them that they're in the right spot.
I think we talked just briefly a little bit too, if there was some designation for the offices needed, we could probably put that on the building or somewhere in the parking lot or whatever, designating those, but they didn't have to maybe be on this sign as needs change or that type of thing.
Right. We're all about
that's
additional
great.
signage going forward.
Yeah. Inside and out, right?
Everywhere. Yep.
Oh, that was great. Thank you very much. I thought,
Yeah,
yes,
thanks.
it was great. If no one disagreed. Now, did you want to address, like I said, I know budget was something as far as the budget and the additional cost in this. I didn't know if you'd considered anything differently. Otherwise, I was going to propose something too, so.
Sure, just to kind of explain where the increases coming from. So the original total cost of the sign was $49,524, and that was $44,635. That's going to be paid by the health department, and then that up to $20,000. That was for the installation, variance, and electrical service. And then with the new design, with the brick base and the navy border all the way around, the sign itself increased by $677 that our grant will pay for by the health department. So that's, we just assumed those costs. And then the installation price increased by $5,208, which is the reason I'm back before you today.
Mm-hmm. Great. That is $5,208.
Correct.
And-
In installation.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And typically, I said many times, we ask the departments to look within their own budgets for overages and that type of thing before we look elsewhere, and if we need to look elsewhere. And I know it's come up from others as well, but there is, because of the director position being vacant for so long, there are dollars in there, and as well that we might be a little reluctant to use vacancies. It still will go back into the general fund, that overage, so we can utilize that difference and that variance from that category and still be within your budget, where this would be taken, if that's meets with board approval to do it that way, or if you have other ideas or suggestions, we're open to that too.
I mean, I'm okay since it's multiple departments benefiting from it, and the county as a whole of making sure that that building is branded as county. I'm fine with just general reserve funds for the additional part.
Me too.
To take it out of general?
Yeah.
Any discussion? Or someone can make the motion then to,
I'll make a motion.
do you need the motion repeated, or yeah, you want to?
We have a motion, but are you including in the motion that you're taking it from general reserves?
Yes.
It sounds like it, yes, all right. Been moved and seconded for that motion, the difference for installation, electrical, and variance to be taken from general reserves. Well, I guess we'll do resolution, so we'll do, please answer as your name is called.
Schwartz?
Yes.
Jelka?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Leyland?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Kate. And department, thank you, everybody, it was great seeing the sign. Do we have a timeline? I guess we didn't think, as far as, I know what you did to have it paid for and get some of those costs and things
Yes.
done, but
We do have a timeline. Our grant funds must be expended by June 30th, so we are quickly working. That's kind of why there's been a little bit of urgency and things to get it going. So we
Nagel feels fine with the timeline and everything too then.
Brian, I'll let you weigh in on
Oh.
that. But I believe so, yes.
We'll get him on record.
We will do everything possible. I spoke with my mason this morning, and he said that we can definitely get the brick base done by then, and that was one of the key factors of getting all of my subs involved in making sure their timelines are going to work as well. The message center typically takes about 4 to 6 weeks to get. So if we weren't going to get approval until the end of this month, we were going to be stretching it. We don't often manufacture the sign without the message center, so I will get after our end. We are required a performance bond and our proof of insurance. As soon as this meeting gets over, I will get that stuff going and then in the hands of Lisa and Gabby. From there, we can get the contracts going as well. So we don't have a lot of time, but we will do everything in our ability to make sure it gets done before July 1.
Great. Thank you very much, Brian.
You bet. You bet. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item D, resolution to approve the Blackhawk County regulation entitled Non-Public Water Supply Wells Regulation, Chapter 8.35, that has been approved and adopted by the Blackhawk County Board of Health.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Jared. Yep.
Yeah, good morning, Board. My name is Jared Parmenter. I'm the Environmental Health Program Manager. I just wanted to give you a quick update on kind of where this is at. This represents kind of the most recent addition to our regulation review for the Public Health Department. Yeah, it really was kind of the efforts of 6-7 months work to get this thing reviewed, to make sure that it was keeping in step with what the DNR has pushed out there. This actually represents an update from roughly over 30 years ago. 1999 was the last time this particular regulation was reviewed. So it was a long time in coming, and actually the next steps with this too will be taking this and signing a 28E agreement with the Department of Natural Resources, hopefully moving forward so that we can continue to do septic and well water permitting in Blackhawk County. So thank you.
So are they reviewed then how often after doing this one and not doing 30 years?
That's a great question. Thank you. We are actually on a 3-year cycle right now for every single regulation in the health department. So it was identified in 2020 that we needed to pick that rotation up, and we've done so. So
great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. It's been moved and seconded. This is a resolution. Please answer as your name is called.
Trelka,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Schwartz,
Yes.
Leyland.
Yes. Item E, motion to authorize and direct the chair to sign the fiscal year 2024 Iowa Department of Transportation secondary road budget and 5-year construction plan as recommended by Catherine Nicholas, County Engineer.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Kathy.
Good morning, Board.
Morning.
As you know, the Code of Iowa requires that every year the engineers submit the coming year's budget as well as a 5-year plan for secondary roads and bridges throughout the county. I generally just give you a real short presentation of what that 5-year plan is.
Yeah.
So I will start that. First, we'll start just very briefly talking about the revenues. And I should say that the budget that we submit to the Iowa DOT is just a 4-page summary budget. It's very, very closely based on the county budget that we submit to you all in the fall and was just approved. So I really don't go into a lot of detail with that budget. Just briefly wanted to mention that these again are our county revenues. We receive farm market funds from the state of Iowa through the road use tax fund. We do receive federal bridge funds, and that is now approximately $600,000 to $800,000 a year. That has increased over the last few years due to Federal Highway Administration giving states such as Iowa, those states who have more deficient bridges, giving us more money to replace those deficient bridges. We do also typically receive every 3 to 5 years a project from the MPO or the Metropolitan Planning Organization or the Regional Transportation Authority. That's typically $300,000 to $500,000 averaging a year. And then, of course, our main source of funding is the secondary road fund, which comes from the road use tax fund. as well as local property taxes here in the county. One big change that we are implementing now due to the new finance director's direction is that, as you know, since 2008, the county has been receiving local option sales tax. 50% of that is to be dedicated for the use of road and bridge construction, replacement of that infrastructure. The finance director has directed that we should, instead of using this as repaying bonds, a bond repayment program, we should be budgeting for funding routine construction projects with this money. She has directed us to set aside a separate fund where we will be allocating that money separately, we'll be tracking it separately, and that is being removed from our secondary road account, our road fund. So you'll see that in a minute, how that is changing what our budget looks like. And then starting in fiscal year 2024, we will be, because of that extra revenue that's now coming directly to us, we'll be putting, on average, one extra project in our 5-year plan. That's on average. And then I should also preface this with, currently, the local option sales tax is set to expire at the end of 2025 or January 1st of 2026, and this is all pending current state legislation. So this is a look at our past 3 years, our estimated revenues, and then our expenditures. And if you look at those 3 years, particularly FY22 and FY23, they were higher, and there are several reasons for that. The first reason is that the Grundy Road project, as you recall, that was an $8 million project. Both counties, Grundy and Blackhawk, bonded $4 million for that project. We had to run the Grundy Road portion that came to us as a revenue, and then that was an expenditure for us. So that did inflate our budget for a few years. In our proposed FY24 budget, our estimated receipts or revenues are less because we are taking the local option sales tax out of the budget. Do you want to have any comments on that, Michelle, or?
Not unless there's questions.
You said you're going to show us slides later that shows how it impacts your budget.
Well, this is primarily that slide. You can see that the receipts have decreased.
Yes.
Quite a bit over the last 3 years, and there's really 2 reasons for that. And we're taking those expenses, we're running our construction expenses through the separate account now.
And that's allowing you one more project per year, estimated, right? Yes. Ongoing.
Yes, on average, yes, that we can put one more contract construction project into the 5-year plan.
Would we change that when we take on debt then? Like if we have another Grundy Road project and we would?
We could if we need to.
But we wouldn't until we saw it was necessary.
Yeah, the only thing that I would say is I'm not sure that if we used bond funds and the debt service, I don't think it ran through the secondary roads budget anyway.
Right.
So I think it won't matter.
Oh, okay.
If we have to borrow, obviously we have to pay interest back so we can get less construction done.
Okay. Thank you.
So I wanted to show you a few slides of what the current road and bridge conditions here are in Blackhawk County. And studies have shown that many people, drivers, judge the quality or condition of the roads by the smoothness of the roads. So many years ago, the International Ride Index, IRI, was developed to help engineers grade our condition of our roads. An International Roughness Index is established by running a high-speed van down a road and collecting profile of the road with a laser. We're looking at the profile in the wheel paths. And this value can run from 0 to 300 would be a very poor IRI. The higher the value, the worse condition, the rougher the road is. So here in the United States, we use IRI. Here in Iowa, we use it to judge the quality of our roads. We can compare our roads, different roads throughout the county, for example. And you can see that 43% of our roads are in good condition, and 42% of our roads are in fair condition based on this IRI number. Another way to look at the quality of the condition of our roads is looking at a more comprehensive index, and this would be the pavement condition index. And this incorporates the roughness, the IRI. It incorporates cracking, rutting, so it incorporates more than just the smoothness, because as engineers, those people who have to maintain the roads, we look at more than just the smoothness of our roads. We're looking at the whole picture of our roads. And PCI does give us a pretty good indication of the quality of our roads. So here in Blackhawk County, and this is based on 2022 data, 38% of the roads are in excellent condition based on PCI, Pavement Condition Index. And then I'll find another slide for the conditions shows that as pavements age, they of course get rougher. That's what we would expect. And here in the Midwest, a lot of our roads fail by climate. We're designing our roads for adequate loads, but it's the climate that we just can't control. The very cold temperatures cause our asphalt pavements and our concrete pavements to crack. And when they crack, water enters into the roadway system, and then as the years go by, more water gets in, more expansion is taking place. That's why we crack seal our pavements, but that's primarily how they are failing is cracking. Again, looking at pavement condition indexes as time goes by, we do see, especially in that last 41 to 50 years, we don't have very many numbers of miles that age, but they are in worse condition. Turning our focus now to our bridges, you can see that I've told you in the past that we do bridge inspections on a 24-month cycle. So we do the north half 1 year, and then the south half of our bridges are being inspected the next year. You can see that over 50% of our bridges are in good condition currently. This shows the condition of our bridges by age, and as you would expect, the older our bridges get, the poorer condition they are in. You know that a lot of our bridges are failing because of the timber pile is failing. We still have bridges that were built up until the 60s and 70s that use timber piles, so we'll still be replacing failing timber pile for a number of years yet. And then lastly, the number of posted bridges. This is very similar numbers to what it was last year. We're saying that we only have about 20 bridges that are posted, mostly due to load requirements. The bridge simply cannot handle the legal loads that are now prescribed by law, by the state of Iowa. 2 of our bridges are closed. You can see there in the slide. So this is what we've been averaging for the last 3 to 4 years, about 20 posted bridges. When we replace one goes back onto our list of posted. One that we've just inspected may come back on as a bridge that needs to be posted. And this is the nature of our management system. Okay, now we'll just briefly look at a few slides for the next 5-year road and bridge projects. So these are the projects that are programmed for FY24, several overlays on Dunkerton Road and Canfield Road. And then you can see we've included approximately $325,000 to the city of Cedar Falls for their Viking Road reconstruction project. We, of course, own 50% of that roadway. We're not 100% sure that we'll expend those funds in this fiscal year. It depends on the schedule that Cedar Falls has established, and we are just projecting that we will spend it this in FY24. They're doing 2 bridge replacements. One will be a bridge crew project, and that is the Big Woods Road project, which will be done by our local bridge crew. And then next year we are proposing to replace the Cedar Wapsie River Bridge over Crane Creek. You can see that will be paid for with federal funds. And then we always include about $50,000 in our 5-year plan every year for, to purchase right-of-way. For example, when we do these bridge replacements, we may need to purchase a small sliver of land. We need to pay people the fair market value, so we need to be including those costs in our 5-year plan. And then just 2 other projects for FY24. We are going to be doing some work on Ridgeway Avenue, and that would be from the Cedar Falls city limits for 2.7 miles to the west. We'll be doing some overlay project, and we'll be using the remaining bond money that is sitting in the bond fund. And starting in FY25, then our projects will be coming out of the new account, the new local option sales tax account. Okay, moving on. I won't go into any great detail. It's just a very typical program of bridge replacements, resurfacings, and then $50,000 for right-of-way costs. If you have any questions over, I can certainly answer them. That's what we have programmed for the next 5 years. This last few slides show the summary of the different types of funding that we are receiving and then the year's expenditure. So the next 5-year program, we are proposing to spend approximately $19 million for our program. And then lastly, the large 11 by 14 handout. This, if you approve the plan today, we will be posting this on our website. So the Blackhawk County residents or anyone visiting our website can see our 5-year plan. And we have it color-coded as to what the year is for construction. Can I answer any questions? I would ask that you approve our plan, and we'll get it submitted to the Iowa DOT by April 15th.
Any comments or questions for Kathy?
No, I don't think so. Very thorough.
Yeah. Well, appreciate the plan. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
It's been motioned and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Approve, same, or disapprove for same sign, but I was going to say the motion carries. Thank you. Item F, motion that the personnel requisition for Administrative Aide 3, full-time, in the Board of Supervisors office be approved as recommended by Michelle Wiedner, Finance Director, Board of Supervisors office.
Second.
Then moved and seconded. Any comments or anyone want to say anything to address it, or just want to talk about the timeline and what we need to be doing or thinking about?
I would just like to say I want to thank Debbie Bunger for stepping in as a temp. She's done a great job for us, but I think she's ready to enjoy her grandkids and maybe a little bit more of this warm weather. So that's why we need to work on filling the position. And I don't know if you want to know more about the timeline, we hope to have somebody on board here in May if we can get through all the steps.
Anna's here. I was going to say to speak to it, so that'd be great. Thank you.
Hello, Anna Knapp, HR specialist. So we haven't really planned a definite timeline, but we plan to post it for 2 weeks. And then I would say, a week or 2 for interviews, and then usually another week or 2 for pre-employment. So we're hoping to have somebody start the middle of May, most likely. So hopefully by then. Okay. Any other questions?
What's the wage scale?
So that is a GS 14 on the non-bargaining pay scale. So the beginning wage is $48,400. Midpoint would be about $58,000, and then the max of the range is a little over $67,000. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.
Any questions, comments? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item H, discussion, possible board action on Senate File 550 and resolution supporting the local option sales tax.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Kathy, did you want to speak to this?
Yes, thank you. I asked for this agenda item to be on. The County Engineers Association is bringing these to many of their boards of supervisors. Of course, local option sales tax, as I've said, in many, many cities and counties, a portion of the local option sales tax does go to fund road and bridge infrastructure repairs. So usually the engineers are the ones spearheading this. This resolution is very similar to the language that you signed in with your resolution of May 30th of 2022, I believe was the date. The Senate File 550 is different though, but it is still asking that the local option sales tax be eliminated and a new statewide sales tax be enacted. And it would, some of the money would go to the new iWills program, and then the rest of the money would go back to the counties for their, as far as we know, to continue with their revenue purpose statements or the local option sales tax that has been voted on. I would ask, as I said, the County Engineers Association, we're asking our boards of supervisors to approve it. I can answer any questions, or if anyone else has any comments.
Well, there wasn't, you mentioned change, but there really wasn't much change. And what we asked, I think, was a little more even in detail. We went into a little more explanation of how we appreciate and support iWills, but not at the cost of losing local control and home rule over funds and the voice of the people here that determined how we spend our lost funds, and not the state. And backfill is also an issue that we can't be guaranteed and haven't seen guaranteed in the past. So this was part of this as well, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know if we want Grant to read the resolution so that everybody's kind of...
Sure.
Would you please?
Whereas the voters of Black Hawk County and cities within the county have voted to enact a 1-cent local option sales tax in accordance with Iowa Code 423B, and whereas the revenue purpose statement approved by Black Hawk County voters is that 50% of county lost revenue be used for rural road construction and 50% be used for property tax relief, and whereas Black Hawk County's growth and development has been enhanced by lost funded road improvements, and whereas Black Hawk County residents and businesses would be negatively impacted in the future if county lost funding for road construction were cut or diverted, and whereas Senate File 550 proposes to remove the voter-approved loss and enact a state sales tax increase, including on jurisdictions where voters had not approved a loss tax, and whereas Senate File 550 also proposes to backfill a portion of new state sales tax increase to local jurisdictions to replace lost revenue, and whereas over the past 30 years, every backfill of funding from the state to local jurisdictions has been terminated or proposed to be terminated to the detriment of cities and counties, including Black Hawk County. And whereas the state sales tax increase in Senate File 550 would trigger the Iowa constitutional amendment to allocate 3/8 of the county sales tax increase to the Iowa Water and Land Legacy Trust Fund, which appears to be a primary reason for stripping local control of loss. And whereas the legislature could consider other options for triggering IWLL besides removing local control of voter-approved loss, therefore, the Black Hawk County Board of Supervisors supports the existing local option sales tax that voters approved and that has been serving the economic needs of Black Hawk County.
Thank you, Grant. Any questions or comments or opinions? Other? Okay. All right. Thank you, Kathy. So is there a motion to approve the resolution?
We already had a
We did
motion.
that, so we got from both? Okay, thank you. So all in favor? Oh, let's do resolution. I suppose would that be all right? Please answer as your name is called.
Trelka?
Yes.
All?
Yes.
Schwartz?
Yes.
Leyland?
Yes. Thank you. Item 10 is the work session. Discussion on the American Rescue Plan Act funds and county reserves. Looking forward to this for a while, I think. Looking forward. Great. You're going to lead off, Michelle, with like your summarizing or however you'd like us to.
I think we're just I'll look through it. All right, so I apologize, there's a lot of numbers on here, but that's what we've got to walk through. So probably everybody remembers that the Blackhawk County received $25,489,501 through the American Rescue Plan Act. Received it into installments. We do have it all now. They did allow, under the law, that a safe harbor of $10 million could be allocated to what I'm calling replacement revenue rather than lost revenue. I think it's more technically correct, and it is what the law calls it. And then, so we have 10 million in that category, and then 15,489,501 for what we're calling ARPA specifically qualified projects. So what we have done so far, get down to the replacement revenue allocation. Early on in the process, actually probably before I was working here, we had a number of smaller projects that were approved, and so we have allocated already $667,298.75 to the lost revenue category for a variety of projects, which I think we will just flip over here and look at those. These are mostly not very large in dollars, but if you'll remember, you approved the compensation study to be done out of here last fall. Then we have the space needs assessment, which has been completed. We purchased some dental equipment for the oral health clinic and the health department, some chairs for the health department, sit-stand desks, uniforms, and vehicles, all for the health department. And then I believe we still have on order a minibus that will be used for environmental education by conservation. And you also approved beginning a pump panel upgrade project for the Washburn sewer. So those total the 667 that we just talked about. There are additional costs being proposed for the pump panel project, which I will be coming back to you hopefully in a week or two with a proposed contract for that, so that we can get, you can choose if you want to do all the work that's required for those.
As part of that 189,000? Or
that'll be in
or
addition to the
it's in
189.
addition to it.
Yes, it's in addition, and that, so there's an additional 200, just about 240,000 that you might choose to do to continue upgrading the rest of the pump panels. So that leaves a balance in the replacement revenue of $9,093,402.11. Then we have the roughly 15.5 million of this ARPA qualifying allocation. And it was kind of surprising when you accumulate all the numbers, but you've actually voted to allocate $9.3 million already of that. And I'm going to flip over and kind of walk through those quickly. Administration, of course, and we're using that primarily for Baker Tilly's contract to help us evaluate all the applications.
That amount's 103, and I think we contracted with them for 100,000.
Yes, that's true. I probably pulled the wrong. There were some change. Well, I don't want to call them change orders. There was consulting we asked them to do in regards to the audit that I think is being added into there right now. So maybe we need to come back and request additional approval of that.
Okay. And probably we still have them working on other projects, I assume, so.
Correct, so we probably need to revisit that
revisit
contract and see if there's a balance in there.
Okay.
So, whoops, I went too fast. So some of the other projects that the board has already approved, we've got a digitizing project in the auditor's office. The biggest one right now is the Cedar Valley Nature Trail, which parts of that are underway. Blackhawk Park shower building replacement, and shower facility at Sigilco Park, and I'm probably saying that incorrectly. And an HVA system rezoning in the administrative office for the conservation department. Blackhawk Park ADA playground, Hickory Hills Park ADA playground, McFarland Park and ADA playground, and Sigilco park, also an ADA playground.
So is there a certain progress we need to be aware of when it says underway?
I was just letting you know
That's
that,
just a term, okay.
yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep. Wonder if I can shift that to show it a little bit better. Then other projects that are ongoing, there were workstations for the auditors, the elections office really, the engineer's office. We purchased some fieldwork computer equipment. And then we have a lot of IT things which I probably can't explain, but the MSI package, builder architect, network accessories, battery backup program, servers, the electronic timekeeping system, which will allow, all those things allow for more remote work. The immutable backup server, disaster recovery planning, wireless access points, switches, fieldwork tablets, backup orchestrator, laptops, docking stations, desktops, monitors. There's just been a lot of IT things. The phone service upgrade, the IT server room fire suppression system. We also did some at-home testing, instruction translations for the health department, purchased a lead isotope reader for the health department. We also have digitizing for the recorder's office remodeling for the recorder's office, and the jail lobby renovation. Then we also have that we're planning the treasurer's office remodel, the Hickory Hills Lagoon engineering and project, the McFarland Park septic project, and then lagoon valve repairs for the Washburn sewer, manhole replacement for Washburn sewer, and a release valve for Washburn, lagoon dredging, and backup generators. And that comprises that 9.3 million. I'll flip back over to that. Then we have another group of projects that are currently under review with Baker Tilly, totaling about 8.7 million. And these are all estimates, so subject to fluctuation, I guess I'll say at this point. So the things that are in process, we have the health department space development at the 5.8 million. Health department also has requested some wall-mounted workstations for about 12. The oral health van, which is actually now ordered, probably should move that to the upper category actually. The mobile health clinic, which was approved today. Then we have, I put two separate lines in here for the election office relocation because the application that was sent to Baker Tilly had an estimate of 800,000. Then later, I believe through conversations with Envision, they had said one location would require a total of about 2 million. So I've put that additional cost on a separate line here. And I think that might only apply to certain locations. Then we have the VA patio shelter that was approved today. And there's also wireless infrastructure for Big Woods Park. And that is the 8.7 million that is discussed on here. Then we have a category of projects that the board has elected to put on hold of just under 2.2 million. And the projects in that category are the Sheriff's Evidence Intake Facility and some office IT remote work for 670,000.
That last IT
Yes.
request that had been $1 million and was reduced to 300,000 or whatever. Okay.
That's correct. Then there are several projects that I know there are applications in development for. So I wanted to include those on here because I know people are working on them and they will be coming to you. And what's making up that, I have an estimate. It's primarily for HVAC at various buildings for 3.15 million. And here's where I put the 240,000 of additional for the Washburn sewer. And then there was a couple of other Washburn sewer projects that hadn't been approved yet, a new fence around the lagoon and some signage. And that total is 3.4 million, a little more than that. So that's all the projects. whoops, I don't have, oh, yes, I do. Okay, I'm sorry. So the additional projects not yet submitted on here that shows that 3.185, that's only the ARPA qualifying projects. The Washburn Sewer's up in the replacement revenue category, so that's why you have to add two numbers together to get that 3.4 million. So then the subtotal of the ARPA requests that we have now is 23.4 million, which exceeds how much we can charge to the ARPA categories, because that was only 15.5 roughly. So we've exceeded our available ARPA allocation by 7.9 million, but we do have the 9 million of revenue replacement funds left. So when we net all that out, we're down to having just under 1.2 million left that can be used, either for change orders as we proceed through these projects. As probably all realize, when you do construction, particularly renovations, you often run into circumstances that you couldn't predict ahead of time and need increases for that. So, but we are rapidly allocating all the costs right now. Then there is one more category of projects that I did add. These are projects that have been spoken about, I guess I'll say. They have not been reviewed or approved, so they haven't been submitted to Baker Tilly or studied in any great depth. Most of these I tried to put costs on here, and a number of these are actually being included, and I don't know if I can, well, I guess if I shrink it, I guess I don't. Some of these are being combined into that HVAC application, quite a number of these that don't have amounts. So it was talked about doing an addition to the jail at 2.5 million. Then the next one I think is incorporated into building maintenance. The x-ray machine has just been delayed at this point. The next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them are all combined into the building applications that are still to come. And the wall-mounted workstations I did get moved above. This is the wrong version, I think, that I copied here. So most of these things have happened. The other things that haven't, there was still a request for premium pay out there for $310,000. A Dolly Parton Library at $50,000. Several sewer projects for other communities in the county. Evansdale, Elk Run, Raymond, LaPorte City. And now we know just recently Gilbertville Fire Station has requested funding. I understand that Dunkerton requested funds for water filtration plant and roads. Cedar Falls suggested maybe their Main Street reconstruction and some sewer projects. And Waterloo presented on their 2030 vision plan. And when I looked at the minutes, I wasn't here when those were presented. That was a year ago. There weren't amounts that they requested for those last few projects, and that's why I don't have amounts there.
Yeah, I can't remember if there were but yeah, when they came and made their request for their projects, yeah.
And that,
That's right.
so those, just the ones that I have amounts for is about 5.86 million.
And some of those projects were just things that were brought up. And some of
Right.
them were also ones that were brought up when we thought ARPA was they qualified
Would
for
cover-
ARPA.
yeah.
And then it was later determined they weren't, so it was just they stayed on for remember this kind of a list, but yeah.
I don't recall the specifics, but was the Unidome request?
Right, I thought
That,
was
Those have
another
all
one.
come later, I think. Those are.
well, no,
different
but as we've
requests.
got
on
this,
here.
as we've got this list, it
Right.
would presumably be another unless you just decide.
If you want me to add it as an ARPA project, I can.
I was gonna say, from an external standpoint, I think we have to do that one, and then natatorium was one as well. I'm trying to think, was there anything else? Those are the two I remember.
Didn't Tom Ekus have some request at 1.2?
He did from transitional housing, yes, trying from the jail too, but I don't think he was just talking about their project in general, kind of in the future, but yeah, I don't think they've done anything since. The other two have capital campaigns.
I can add those to that list.
I can't think if there's others.
There's the high school pool. They came and
Yeah,
presented.
natatorium they call
Oh,
it, so
that-
sorry,
okay.
yeah. I'm
What do
flipping
they
off.
call it?
Natatorium.
Natatorium.
I thought you said auditorium.
I had never heard it before until they brought it to us, so it's like an education for me.
I think it'd be an aquatorium.
Cool. So some of those, like the HVAC things, I was going to say too, are those phased-in things? Are those multiple buildings? I was just curious on status of some of those because I know those were some high dollar.
Please.
Is that yeah? Thank you, Rory.
Yeah, so Rory Giving, maintenance superintendent. So what we're looking at HVAC is all three large buildings, the jail, the courthouse, and the Pinecrest facility. Depending on how with regards to the Pinecrest facility, depending on how the health department request for the clinic and fifth floor remodel, that will have somewhat of an impact on how that HVAC upgrade application looks. With regards to that clinic in the fifth floor, there is some HVAC related mechanicals that were included in that. So that application will slightly change depending on how that process goes. With regards to the courthouse and the jail, there'll be some significant phasing in with regards to looking at large equipment such as chillers and boilers. We've recently upgraded those. What we're looking at is our field devices. For an example, flow throughout the building, better management through computer control. Although we do have systems at each of our facilities, we do realize that there are areas that are starting to fail, starting to create a lot of maintenance activities for us to stay on top of, and just improving that air quality throughout our buildings. That would be a pretty extensive project that we would take sections and phase that in, if that answers your question. The ultraviolet germicidal process, that really goes hand in hand with this HVAC remodel as well for all of our facilities. So we are hopeful to take benefit from these applications because these are going to be very large projects. We're hopeful that we'll get interest if it does go through. What we're hearing throughout the community, and I think we saw with Conservation's HVAC upgrade, lead times are concerning. Labor force is concerning. And so, we'd like to come in and turnkey around these projects as quick as possible, but I think the reality is that we are going to have to take it in sections and phase. I know that was a little long-winded to your question, but...
Well, I was just thinking from timelines and what we have to hit for timelines for allocation, but also for spending the money down, and will we have these kinds of things done? I mean, they're...
That is a concern, especially when you're looking at long lead times for equipment. But as we're sitting right now, as far as these applications go, we're still narrowing down the cost, and I'm hopeful that we'll have these applications ready for the committee to review here soon. But yes, the sooner the better, particularly when you're dealing with that type of program with HVAC. We're just seeing ridiculously long lead times. So it's something to consider.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Is the committee looking at, I mean, obviously winding down, I guess, from applications that we'd receive, kind of prioritizing? I'm just thinking in general, or us prioritizing too, but I just meant some kind of a process as we start winding down?
Yeah, at this point, so there's a couple of things right now. Number one, you may remember, and not the entire board was on that email because I sent it to the committee, but at least a couple of you were on it. I sent out an email a while back that actually got kind of just called to attention where we were at in terms of the math. And then what Michelle did was a much more meticulous totaling, where she not only, what I did was I said, okay, look, we've got this many things approved, and we've got these that look like they might be coming to be approved, and that's going to start cutting into lost revenue, or replacement revenue as we're calling it. But then what Michelle has done is just looked into, well, what else have people talked about? What has been on this list over time? We haven't really gone and tried to prioritize anything. Over time, what we've done is we've submitted requests as they have been submitted to us and reviewed by Baker Tilly, and then allowed the board to prioritize. So, for example, there's, I believe, a couple of requests that the board's received that have not yet, that have been evaluated, but they've not yet been approved by the board, and I think the board's characterized those as being on hold right now. The evidence facility comes to mind, but if the committee should prioritize that, we would appreciate that direction from the board. But then that also creates a question in my mind of, well, what factors do you want us to consider when we prioritize? What goal are we trying to accomplish?
Well, and I think that's more of a decision from the board standpoint, but I was thinking from your standpoint of the committees, looking at if we start seeing projects that don't look like they can be fulfilled in the timeline we're in, or, those kind of decisions that help us make decisions that, like, okay, when you really look at them realistically, can they be completed and in the timeline that we need? Because otherwise then we always have to have a backup plan for something falling through and not wanting to return money, obviously, because we haven't utilized it, but to say, okay, then if we can't do this, then we do these projects, or,
Well, and I think in terms of whether it's realistic to have a project fulfilled, some of it's going to depend heavily on two factors. Number one, do we get it going soon enough for it to be fulfilled? Number two, does the contractor, teams of contractors, do they indicate that it can be fulfilled on time? And we would have to rely on their experience and expertise in that regard. So far, projects that have been approved, I've not seen where they look like they cannot be completed on time. But we have had some long lag times and waiting. I know the Turtle Top bus was mentioned there. That one was committed, I believe. Gosh, it was last summer, last spring, I believe that was committed, and it's just, that's where vehicle timelines were at that time. Some of that stuff is changing, but I don't know where HVAC and other construction work is right now.
I would assume that will come through in the next couple of years. Would you, Mike? I don't know if you have an update on that. Well, we call it the Turtle Top Van, but I was going to say as far as arrival.
We have gotten information back from that company, and they've said now we're talking about delivery this spring. They're now talking about December of this year. Okay. And that's the latest, and I wouldn't be surprised if it gets pushed back again. But that's what we know right now. So that's kind of what we're running into.
Yeah, that's what I wondered. I think maybe for the mobile health clinic might be one of those issues too. I'd hate to see that loss for that, but.
So a few thoughts I have. I know I said it before. I think it'll be easier for me to prioritize the rest of the projects after we've gotten through the health department and the elections office, because those are the two big priorities that are remaining for me. And then I can take a more holistic approach at everything else that's left, and then weigh it. In regards to Washburn, I don't think I can support any more or any additional investments in that until we've addressed the rates.
Yeah,
I know I bring it up every time we talk about Washburn, but it has to be done, because it's not going to be sustainable in 20 years from now when they need more upgrades. They can't bank on there being another federal program to draw from.
Well, and I think while we have these dollars that we're allocating and spending and doing projects and upgrades there, we probably have the impetus right now to really kind of say, hey, get the people together and this is what we'd like to do, but we need to start this plan for funding.
And we have priorities shifting too, a lot of moving parts. We have some IT concerns to address.
Yep.
For sure. Well, are there anything, I guess we thought at least today to have this discussion, kind of have some of this out, and then are there other things we want to see from Michelle or the committee or whatever to help us make decisions? But other than, like you said, I think elections and as definitely in the health clinic, and there are two priorities we've had. So it's just, but they're large and need to, see.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
No. On the election. Well, On the elections facility.
It's a work session.
I think everyone is kind of wanting to see some more directions, whether it be from space utilization or otherwise, as to what, what can be done. For example, where do we need to be with JCS? What's the board's desire with regard to what kind of facility we create? I've seen a lot of flexibility coming from elections and saying, look, this is what we really want, but that can be accomplished in one of a number of ways. But right now I'm not seeing a lot of direction, and I know there's some urgency on this project. Whereas with health, there's urgency, but there's also a design that's in place, at least right now. Now I know they're talking about potentially other options for health, and then that would make that more of a pressing concern, because we'd have to figure out whether you were looking at acquiring another facility or how that's going to work. But those kind of things are going to require more planning, especially if we are looking at acquiring more facilities or building onto a facility or something like that. And that's where I see us really potentially running late with these.
Well, I think we both see those projects as urgent, and I think even the Space Committee is looking at that as like we need to have some decisions and discussion and get this going. So I think that's a positive, as close as we've probably ever been.
Right. And maybe putting the Space Committee on a weekly or bi-weekly meeting schedule might help with that as well, where it's just recurring every Thursday at 1 o'clock or whatever it happens to be. I think that's when the last one was.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think we were looking forward to the next one, making some progress. So yeah, we'll see, Mike. But yeah, if we need to go weekly, whatever that's going to take to keep some impetus going too. Is there information? How would you like information? Would you like more information for decision making down the road, even if we get these two projects kind of as a priority? Are there things, I guess there's probably decisions we need to take if there's projects we want to remove from the list?
Well, specifically with elections, I wonder if there isn't value in having a work session at next week's supervisors meeting to talk about the options so that we can set direction. I mean, if we're saying that they need direction, I think it makes the most sense for the 5 of us to do it, and not just the 2 folks that are appointed to the ARPA committee. So,
and I would include public health in that conversation too, because one option might be that they're in the same.
Do we want like work sessions that for both, like just to put something on and have those discussions and kind of see where we're at, or did we not? I was going to say from the last meeting, I know the Space Committee wanted, I think, another session to kind of get together to finalize some things, wasn't it? And then maybe that would be, wait till that, because that was going to be next week. I think you're trying to schedule that, somebody, right?
Yeah, next week, Thursday.
So maybe after that, then we could
Following
have something
Tuesday.
on the board, yeah.
Okay.
And then if we want both combined or however, we can
Right.
do something like that, okay? Well, about Dan, what things are you thinking, I guess? Would you like to, anything, I guess, for any of us, but I just meant he was quiet, we were.
Well, I'm digesting the numbers. I'm surprised how much we have potentially tied up already. And like I said, priorities are shifting.
And some of those are on hold, so that does, could change. So we could change that easily,
I'm wondering if we should have ARPA discussions more frequently,
like every week.
because we're getting down to the wire.
Yeah. Well, and I thought updates are helpful too, when some of those to say underway or status or where are we, it gives us an idea where they really are in the process too.
I think in terms of, I feel comfortable us allocating the entire, 25 million and looking to the reserves as being the cushion for overages.
That's certainly an option.
We know, that is good. I mean, we're in a very comfortable place to be able to do that with some of these, or if I was worried about some of the dollars, if they come into it being new construction and being higher than what we're projecting.
That's my fear. I think
And then, now what? So,
some of our projects are going to be much higher than are projected.
but we are fortunate to have the reserves to
Right.
use for that, since we wanted to.
And when I look at the reserves, I kind of look at how is some of that money was built up into it, that I feel like we do have an obligation to invest somehow in the community, and that would be still the remaining proceeds from the sale of Country View. The money that we taxed for Country View for the operation of it in the last year that we had it before selling, that was about $1 million that we didn't touch for its operation. And then there was CARES Act funding that the last finance director had made a decision just to use it to offset salaries to give us flexibility with what to do with it in the future, and we haven't touched those. So those are three different areas where the reserves have built up over the years that are, I think, in the spirit of the kind of types of projects and stuff that we're looking at.
Community-minded type of things.
And I'll get on the agenda for next week, the presentation by one city.
You mentioned that. Okay, so we do have that. Gotcha.
Yeah, I would like to see more process for some of those community projects. I know that there was a fund that I think we used half of last year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the other half ended up getting allocated. There was the Gross Cedar Valley dollars.
I see what you mean.
Food bank dollars. There were a handful, right? So there's those pieces when we're talking probably a little bit more about just budgeting practice, but then also on these bigger projects that was noted in Michelle's presentation, right? What is the process to identify what level of support we want to come in at, if at all?
Or some of those, like those external ones you were speaking to?
Yeah, because right now, every one of those is, almost all of those, I think with the exception of Washburn, that we've spent thus far have been internal. And I would like to see us utilize ARPA dollars as well as reserve dollars back into community and not just these internal uses.
Yeah.
Internal uses are valuable, but I also think that the communities that we serve are equally, if not more so.
And that might be an update, like Michelle, then we'd need some of those numbers, like what they're talking about, program dollars and that type of thing. I'm not sure I remember the number for what we had allocated last year, and then there was some
For those
funding, the agencies, but I thought there was something else that came up that wasn't as large as we thought then, but I don't remember right now. But those types of things. Yeah, have those discussions. That's part of the process.
Because that is something I want to weigh. I'll say health department and elections, getting those done, but with what's left after that, I do feel like that is the spirit of the legislation that was passed, that some of that is invest in the community, and we probably need to, in order of fairness, like have some kind of application process that could be mimicked after some of the qualifications that we had come up with the allocations we were doing before, but.
Yeah. And that could probably be done fairly quickly as far as the application. I'm sure they could apply then fairly quickly as well. Yeah, that might be a good way to do it. Because I said otherwise everybody comes in with a different type of presentation and you have to start looking at the different ways to judge it. So that could be something we look at too. So it sounds like everybody's in agreement though. Focus first is elections and public health clinic. Kind of we need to, okay.
Then IT. I would put IT at 3.
Pressure's on, Rory, for your next space committee meeting. No, that's great. Then we'll get going. Well, that's great. Well, is there anything else I was going to say as far as thanks for the information?
We haven't run through the estimated.
Oh, yeah, the reserves.
Balance. We don't have to do that today unless you want to.
Oh. No, I think it's just good to go over the numbers. Why not? Yeah, please.
This is called scientific wild guesses.
Yeah, there's a little.
So I started with the fund balance that we know today, which is of course June of 22. So then just kind of guesstimating some things that I expect to happen by June of 23. I think we're probably going to see an increase in restricted funds, which will reduce our unrestricted.
What's that from?
Just some specific projects that kind of run through the general fund, but the funds are required to be spent in a certain way. So.
And we'll continue to do that. You mean that's why they will be?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And then just guessing, looking at budget performance through the end of March, I would guess we might add as much as $1 million this year, based on how the budget, it's a combination of how the budget was set than actual performance. So I do think our fund balance is likely to be up slightly by June of 2023. And then the other part of the formula to figure out that ratio is what are your expenses. So I just used expenses from the certified budget to say that we might be at 70% by the end of June of 23. Then we know, as we worked on the 2024 budget this year, we did say about $1.2 million for a turnover factor. So if all our positions stay filled all year, we would need to use this 1.2 of fund balance. And then we also transferred $2.5 million to be used for capital projects. So I'm expecting, obviously I totally expect that to happen. So our fund balance, we expect by June of 2024, the unassigned to drop to just under 24 million. Expenses will be up. That's primarily because of that capital, the $2.5 million. So that would drop that ratio to 55% at June of 2024. Then getting beyond that is pretty difficult. I put in $1 million turnover factor again because I think we'll see we can continue doing that. May not take $1 million of our fund balance, but we're planning for that, right? So I've built in a rough estimate of how much expenses might increase in June of 2025. That could bring that unassigned balance down to 48%. I repeated that process for 2026, which would bring it down to 44, and then at June of 27 down to 40. And all I can tell you about this is I know those won't be the numbers. It's just the best estimate I can give you today. And we, at some point, maybe want to discuss what's the bottom level that we don't want to drop below. And I know that both the Government Finance Officers Association, they put out something suggesting a range of 15 to 30%. I would suggest you want to stay on the 30% range. It's really hard to build that fund balance once it's gone. So if we can keep it at a level and just commit to not, dropping below that, I think it's a better process.
Well, and you were going to be examining some of the reasons, like we had a couple of years or some years that we had added to the general reserves that we were really questioning why or how or what we needed to do to not do that because we didn't want to be.
Right. I'm trying. I mean, you've got a lot of transitions here because you have a different person in my seat that tried to tighten down, I guess I'll say, our budget practices a little bit. And you've had other changes that have happened from the state level. For example, the backfill on the rollback, the commercial industrial rollback. We now know how much we're going to get every year for the next several years as that's phased out. So I was able to budget exactly what I expect us to receive, which you didn't have that luxury 2 years ago and prior to that. So there's just things that are changing that I think will reduce that, and implementing the turnover issue should also help. There's so many things beyond, things we can control that could change it, but yes, and you're right, we did have some unusual things happen in some of the prior years. The sale of Country View was a huge one. We had subsidized Country View operations by $2 million, unbudgeted, in 2018, I believe. So the next year we did budget to subsidize it by $2 million, didn't have to because we ultimately sold it. So those $2 millions kind of wipe each other out, but we still have the $3 million we got from the sale that certainly contributed to us being in a good place. There's about three things. Chris is correct about the CARES money adding to the fund balance. That was about 1.7 million. So those are three of the larger things that have occurred in the last several years that helped increase our fund balance. And I think just looking at vacancies and the pandemic, I think the pandemic probably affected your hiring ability. And so we saw increases from what I can only assume are unfilled positions because I don't have enough information to narrow it down more than that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it really was never our goal to try to be at 70%. It's just that over the occurrences that happened, I mean, we liked that we were in a real sound place, but it was still like not to that level.
Yeah, and you know, the sale of Country View is kind of probably a once in a decades type of decision that added to things. And then operations, I mean, our departments do a very good job of trying to manage their money wisely, so that can end up resulting in performance savings every year too.
And are there other things now, like we can put in an assigned category, you know, like we talked about capital and technology and those types of things that kind of allow us to have the freedom to do those kind of purchases when we need to, but it doesn't work against us?
Yes, and I'm continuing to research how definite those plans have to be to do that.
Or for any other purpose. I was just thinking there were some of those.
Yes, if we know that we have goals, long-term goals to do things, we can accumulate funds and call them assigned,
So yeah, at some point, I guess we need to kind of want to see what level we feel is
I think that makes
comfortable
sense.
level, because with the current legislature, I'm not sure. We need more and more, but we can do that too at some.
Yeah, and I know
maybe we address the ARPA stuff more immediate. Kind of those are the projects and stuff we want to get some attention.
that makes
to.
sense. Yes.
Okay.
I will say Iowans. It was interesting. Iowans for Taxpayer Relief did post something to the ISAC base camp thing, and they quoted that GFOA statement about 15 to 30% being, in their mind, also a reasonable amount. And that one group seems to have a lot of influence at the state level right now.
In all these years, they've never been that low. It was always 25 minimum.
Right, and then
now,
I think when
maybe if they think they don't
economic,
have funding.
when the economic conditions started declining, then I think GFOA reduced a little bit that range, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I just think they did that, and so then they made it a range of the 15 to 30 instead of just saying
Now we have a
25.
new law.
Was that post just about county governments or state government as well?
Oh yeah, interestingly, it seems to be much more of a focus on local government than state.
The state doesn't look at it themselves.
No, they have, and
Sitting on
it would be
billions.
very interesting if
Millions.
we were only budgeting 89% of what we actually expected for revenue, the way the state does. I mean, that's a lot of revenue that they're budgeting that they're not budgeting to spend, and at least compared to what we're able to do.
Yeah.
So it is.
They have good ideas, they think, for us.
Yes, that seem to be different than what they have for themselves. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and as we have other questions or things to discuss in that too, we can send them or forward those out.
Yes. Let me know, and we
Okay.
can. I mean, if you.
So we'll want, it sounds like then another discussion next week. We'll do a work session, I should say, throw it on as a work session, something like we did budgets. Okay, that sounds good for everybody? Okay.
And if you have specific
Yeah.
information you want, let us know.
Yeah, looking at the list. Sure. Well, and I think it's great to have staff available, because I thought sometimes to speak to their projects when there's
because
questions,
I can't.
because why not?
Maybe Mike can do them justice, but I can't. So, yeah, it's better if they do that.
I was
Well,
going to
let's-
say, I think it's better coming directly from the department on that.
Sure, that's great.
But I also think, in fairness to department heads for a couple of these projects, they need some direction, and that's where I've been thinking as we sit here about talking to Rory and Caitlin and Grant right after this, just about how are we going to get the space how are we going to ensure that the space utilization committee actually ends with a conclusion as to a recommendation or a desire, so that the board at least understands what that committee wants to see for elections and for health. Because that's, if we keep ending up inconclusively, we could go on like this.
Oh, I don't think we're
ad
gonna do that.
infinitum.
I think we're gonna start moving.
Okay. I hope so.
Well, we've got to take it and
Yep.
do some things with it, whether it's engineering or whatever, that helps us make some of those decisions on what we do and how we do it, or don't do it. Don't we? I mean, I would think an engineer's gonna have to be involved in some of this fairly soon.
Well, I think we have to start with figuring out what direction we want to take it before we even get to that engineering. For example, if we're talking about a health clinic,
Oh, I know.
or a health department renovation, are we doing it in Pinecrest or are we doing it elsewhere? I thought we were on a track toward doing it in Pinecrest, and I kind of think we still are, but all of a sudden it's been brought up again a couple of times, putting it in another location, and these kind of create delays when we don't know where we're going with it. Elections is sort of the same thing here, because there's been talk about putting it in JCS and elsewhere, and now there's also talk about keeping it here.
You get nervous?
I am getting a little nervous.
Well, that's why I said we need the timelines to move some things along, so appreciate that. We'll do it. We'll make progress. Okay. All right, we'll move on to item 11, any reports or information from the board? None? Okay, motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, we're staying.